In this video we are going to explore one of my go-to painting methods that allows me to paint not only portraits but really anything in 4 simple steps. And to demonstrate how and even more importantly why this approach works so well, I'll be painting one of my signature style paintings that many of you have been asking me to paint for quite some time. So buckle up and let's find out how anything can be painted in just 4 simple steps. And if you want to dive even deeper into the process of how I painted this beautiful young lady here, make sure to head over to Patreon, where you can find an extended version for this and many of my other videos. Step 1. Create outlines. Every artist has experienced this at some point. For example, you're painting a face, focusing on mixing colors and being super accurate, capturing every detail. But when you finally take a step back, after many hours of focused hard work, you realize that somehow, somewhere along the way, things have gone sideways. The forehead is big enough to project a movie onto it, the lips are thin and don't have any volume, and for whatever reason, you have managed to somehow paint a face from 3 different perspectives at the same time. But the eyes you've painted look pretty decent, if only one of them wasn't 3 times as big as the other one. This is precisely why we start our paintings with an accurate drawing, or how I like to call it, outlines. Painting itself is already hard enough. Mixing colors, creating the illusion of light and shadow, painting transitions, creating texture. But doing all of that while trying to get proportions, anatomy, or compositions right is more often than not a complete nightmare. Especially for people who don't have years and years of practice and experience. This is why the first step in painting anything is to take this part out of the equation and to deal with it before you even put down your first brushstroke. Doing this allows you to focus on everything else during the painting process without constantly running into problems because something drawing related is off. Doesn't matter what it is you want to paint, people, objects, dragons, aliens, you name it. It's always much easier to split the drawing and the painting portion up and deal with them separately. How you get there, of course, is totally up to you. There is no right or wrong way of doing this, and you should always do what suits you, your abilities, and your goals best. Some people prefer to draw directly onto the painting surface and then start painting. In my opinion, not the best approach, for various reasons. Others use a form of grid method to translate their reference to the painting surface. Especially when you get to bigger paintings, this is almost inevitable. You can use a projector or a transfer method, or you can use a combination of the above. For example, creating a drawing and then transferring or projecting that drawing onto your canvas. Each method has its advantages and disadvantages, but they all give you the same result. I personally prefer to use something like a projector most of the time, because honestly, I can't be bothered with spending hours and hours on what's essentially just prep work for me. As a professional artist, my focus is to constantly produce the best work that I can as effectively and efficiently as possible, and skipping the drawing part altogether not only lets me do this best, but it also suits my painting style the best. But your mileage of course may vary. Step 2. Work out the details. The next step might sound counterintuitive, especially for people familiar with traditional drawing or painting bits of advice. But in my experience, it helps most people draw and paint anything they want in a simple and straightforward way. And it's to start with the most complex and detailed areas of what you're painting first. One of the most common art advice that you will come across is to start with big shapes. Start your painting very rough or loose and then gradually get more detailed and refined. This isn't necessarily bad advice, because if you have the skills and the knowledge to pull this way of painting off, it is one of the most visually pleasing and impressive. But if you don't, and believe me, most people don't, it's probably not going to work for you. Starting with big shapes and getting more refined is pretty much painting, drawing, and figuring out proportions at the same time. It's already hard to do just one of these things, let alone do all of these things simultaneously. From a technical and psychological point of view, it makes a lot of sense to focus on the complicated stuff first, and then to move on to other things. A painting can take anywhere from a few hours to a few days or even weeks. It makes sense to use the initial burst of energy and enthusiasm that you typically have at the beginning of a project to get some of the most challenging and most important parts out of the way. It's rewarding and motivating, and it encourages you to keep going because things are already looking promising. But also from a technical point of view, this makes sense. I started this painting, for example, by painting the eyes first, arguably the most essential element of the image. Focusing on this part first before doing anything else makes sure that I get this absolutely fundamental part right from the very beginning. There is nothing more frustrating and demotivating than running into problems halfway through a project. You're going to run into problems all the time anyway, but the complicated stuff is really hard to fix. Fixing a composition, absolute nightmare. Moving an eye 1 centimeter to the left, if you've ever tried that, you know that you might as well start a completely new painting at that point instead of bothering. And the same goes for lips or the nose. But fixing something like a hairline or color is relatively easy. So start with the complex stuff first, get it right from the start, and then enjoy a smooth ride. Step 3. Fill it out. With all the complex stuff out of the way, we can finally relax a bit. This is the part where you can actually be a bit looser and ease up a bit. The main goal of this step is to get paint onto the painting surface and to finally cover it up. This step is less about accuracy and more about creating the overall look for the whole painting. Color harmony, brushwork, texture. With this painting here, you will see me switch to bigger brushes and a lot more dynamic way of painting once I move away from individual features of the face. At this point, it's all about the flow of the brushstrokes and the color composition and the vibrant skin. But I also want to just cover everything up as fast as I can so I can finally move on to the last step. Chances that you don't have to make any corrections or adjustments after this are pretty much zero. So you might as well take things a bit easier and disregard some of the details. You're going to have to come back and tweak things anyway. You can really go as simple or as complicated as you want here. You can just put patches of color next to each other until your painting looks loose yet close to finished. Or you can spend more time on rendering individual areas of the painting to make them stand out. Either way, the goal is to fill everything out before moving on to the last step. Step 4. Adjust and make it your own. In the end, there will always be areas or parts of a painting that will need some adjustments. Areas that are too light or dark, areas that are too busy, or proportions that aren't 100% right. This is the part where you can fix all of those issues. But this is also the part where you can make a painting your own. Whatever it is you've painted, you probably didn't manage to 100% capture or replicate it at this point. So if you ask me, and this is just my personal opinion, you might as well add or change things to your own liking to make it your own. This step is arguably one of the most important, but also unfortunately one of the most underappreciated. Believe it or not, you are free to change colors, add things, or take stuff away according to your own liking. You don't have to just paint something the way you see it. I've said it before and I'll happily say it again, painting what you see will also only get you what you see. And 9 times out of 10, if you are painting something from real life, it's going to be boring as hell. I personally like to paint more intuitively at this point. And more often than not, I will completely put my reference aside and just focus on my own painting. In the case of this painting, this means to use color and techniques like design elements. Hair turns into brush strokes, turns into paint, turns into movement, and a healthy dose of abstract shapes. But this is just with this painting. And depending on what I paint and what my end goal is, this part of the process can be completely different. The point is, once you stop comparing your painting to your reference material, you can finally freely judge it on its own and make adjustments to it. I like to call this part giving the painting what it needs. This can sometimes mean a little push in contrast, sometimes a change of color, more detail, but other times this can mean the addition of 2 dinosaurs and a bag of fries to the painting. It's totally up to you. So adjust and make it your own. I hope you enjoyed this little dive into the mind of an artist, friends. Leave a like and a comment down below. See you in the next video. Hope you have a wonderful, inspiring day, and yeah, have a good one.